Hello, everyone, and welcome to our last consultation session. So we are Project VE Redefine. So here you can see all the project partners. So here about the project itself and the rationale of the entire project. Why is it important to define VE? First of all, it is important because we do not have any conceptual definition with us that is official. And secondly, there is no definition that is inclusive enough to incorporate the experiences and realities of young peace builders from South Asia. Secondly, it is important because every year, different stakeholders like national governments, UN bodies, NGOs, multilateral organizations, they all spend millions of dollars on various PVE and CVE measures. But at the same time, they don't have any agreed upon definition on which they're actually working. So what happens with all of these things? Because we do not have a very comprehensive and agreed upon definition, all the money that you are spending is actually not addressing the root causes of violent extremism. And at the same time, at the place of addressing any of the root causes, it is actually exaggerating the existing problems. So this is why we need to address the ambiguity that is actually abused by power holders in several states. So what are the basic objectives of Project VE Redefine? First of all, we are aiming at developing a more inclusive, localized, and contextualized definition that primarily incorporates the views of youth and youth peace builders from South Asia. Secondly, we want to unite the voices of South Asian young peace builders because these peace builders are the people who have been in this context. They have been experiencing violence and they have been the people who are working on violence and in various capacities. So it is them whose voices should be included. And right now we are focusing on four countries: India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. And lastly, we have a part on policy advocacy for young peace builders definitions of violent extremism to become official and should be used by various stakeholders, and how we are actually planning to achieve these aims. So we have different parts as you can see on the screen. We have already completed the first part in which we conducted literature and institutional review to understand what is the existing understanding of VE, PV, and CV, in which we uh, completed 10 UN bodies, 4 different countries, 20 plus NGOs, and 10 plus think tanks. And overall, there were 100 plus publications and websites that we visited to understand how they have been using these terms. In the second phase, in which we are right now, we are actually sharing the entire findings with all the ally fellows because we believe that it would be difficult to actually come and say anything like what you think of one extremism until unless you don't know what is there actually uh, in the literature, what is the current understanding. So we are sharing the findings to make you understand what we already have with us regarding the ECV and PVE. In the next phase, we would be collecting reflections from the fellows. We will be reaching out to all the fellows and ask them that, hey, what do you think should be PE? And then we will be using all the data that we gather. We will be developing various social media material to actually start our social media campaigns to reach out public and spread the findings and share the knowledge with them. And in the last phase, we will be having advocacy missions in which we will be reaching out to various stakeholders and advocating for new definition of VE to become official. So beginning with what are the definitions that we already have with us. Firstly, with UN bodies. UNGA, which is the primary body that has all the countries coming together to take the major decisions, they themselves have actually acknowledged that we do not have any clear definition. And for them, definition of terrorism and violent extremism are the prerogatives of member states. Secondly, the main point is that they say that these definitions must be consistent with their obligations under international law, in particular international human rights law. At the same time, they are specifically focusing on various organizations like Islamic State in Iraq, ISIL, Al Qaeda, and Boko Haram, and they are focusing on how they have these organizations, these groups they are trying to shape the entire narrative. So these groups, messages of tolerance, religious, culture, social, has had drastic consequences for many regions of the world, holding territory and using social media for the global and real-time communication of their ideas and exploits they seek to challenge our shared values of peace, justice, and human dignity. So this spread of violent extremism have further aggravated an already unprecedented humanitarian crisis, which surpasses the boundaries of any region. Millions of people have fled the territory controlled by terrorist and violent extremist groups. Moving further, what are the CVE measures that they have? First of all, there is a body that has been leading the international efforts on CVE, that is UN Office of Counterterrorism. So the office has been helping various NGOs and think tanks to further the CVE measure, as well as helping various national governments as well. As for the seventh review in July 2021, there are various specific areas that UNOCD focuses on. First is the criminal justice system. Second is ensuring that terrorists do not have safe haven online. Third is suppressing the financing of terrorist acts. Ensure that any person who participates in the financial planning, preparation, or perpetration of terrorist acts or in supporting terrorist acts is brought to justice. Protection of vulnerable targets, strengthening international cooperation, and recognizing the role that victims of terrorism in all its forms and manifestations can play. In terms of PVE, they have an entire plan of action with UNGA, which has like three different parts, as you can see on the screen. One, the first part is addressing the drivers of violent extremism, and as you could see, they have not narrowed it down, and these are very broad measure. For instance, lack of social economic opportunities, marginalization and discrimination, unresolved conflict, radicalization, and prison. Moving on the other side, in terms of the policy framework, so they have different levels starting from the global, where you could see the name of different UN agencies. Second is the national plan, national PVA plans of action. Okay, there is one person joining. Okay, so in national PVA plan of action, you have an all of government, all of society. So basically, uh, having different stakeholders coming together to actually do something. But we will look very soon how many of the governments do not have such sort of a plan, and then we have regional PV plan of action. Then there are different priority areas, and if you could see, they're actually touching upon various dimensions, starting from conflict prevention and dialogue to looking at human rights, then engaging with youth, empowering communities, gender equality, and empowering women, to skill development, to social media. Moving forward to UNDP, so even UNDP recognizes there is a lack of consensus internationally. Secondly, it does recognize that different terms like violent extremism, terrorism, and radicalization, these terms are used interchangeably. On the other hand, there is no single international agreement on definition of violent extremism, but UNDP consider violent extremism as beliefs and actions of people or groups who support or use violence to achieve ideological, religious, or political goals, including terrorism and other forms of politically motivated and sectarian violence. Moving forward to CVE measures. So, like CVE typically refers to action aimed at addressing the drivers of violent extremism through softer approach. And secondly, is either complement or alternate to counterterrorism and security measures. So the main focus in or more counterterrorism and security sort of measures when we come to CVE measures adopted by UN. However, in practice, there is typically a large overlap between many of the initiatives projects labeled as PVE and those labeled as CV. So basically, there is no distinction between what could be constituted as preventive measures and countering measures. Moving forward to PVE measures, as with violent extremism, there is also no agreed definition of PV that we have seen, and that is where they have a range of approaches to prevent and reduce influence of violent extremism. And the operation of violent extremist groups using alternates, typically relying on development solution and peace building methods in contradistinction to security-based approaches. This is like the major distinction when it comes to their CV and PV measures. When we talk about the youth inclusive PV initiatives in UNDP, They promote young peace builders digital literacy to improve the capacity to spot fake news, rehabilitation and reintegration, preventing extremism, promoting tolerance and civic engagement in school and online advocacy, peace building, conflict prevention, and mediation. Moving forward to other UN bodies, because these bodies are in one way or in other way, they are trying to address PVE and CVE. So starting from UNSCR, so they consider violent extremism as a factor responsible uh, for forced displacement, but at the same time, they do not have any sort of specific definition of either CVE or PVE measures. UNESCO, again, they have no definition, but at the same time, they do have various educational programs under the PVE. And in terms of youth involvement, they are responsive and they have various programs on UNSCR 2250. Coming to UNV, they don't have any specific VE, CV, or PV definition or any direct project, but at the same time, they are helping UNDP in the implementation of their PV and CV images, specifically in the African countries. UNFPA, again, they do not have any specific definition of any of these three, but UNFPA is one of the major bodies that is responsible for the UN SCI 2250, the Youth Peace and Security Agenda implementation, and they have been helping youth to participate in decision affecting them and strengthening their ability to advance human rights and development issues. When it comes to UN Women, again, no specific definitions. When it comes to the PVE measures, they consider it under the WPS, the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. And through youth and gender equality strategy and promoting young women, they are trying to include youth and specifically women in the entire spectrum. Again, UN ODC, they do not have any specific definition or measures, but they try to cover various terrorism or related to terrorism issues under the spectrum of initiatives to prevent drug use. And this is where they're actually engaging with youth as well. Now, moving forward to another part, that is international funding agencies. So first, starting from European Union as our project. Uh, European Union, they also have no official definition in any resolution or meeting, press report, or other publication. And we have referred to more than 190 links here, but we have found nothing. Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which is linked to European Union, they provide a very comprehensive description, though, stating that we generally refers to acts of violence that are justified by or associated with an extremist religious, social, or political ideology. The concept of violent extremism is broader and more expensive than terrorism because it accommodates any kind of violence as long as its motivation is deemed extremist. We will. They also have one specific concept of VRLT, violent extremism leading to terrorism, that we'll talk very soon. Moving forward, so they do not have any specific distinction between the CV and PV major. They usually use the term C/PVE majors. So according to them, a broad umbrella term that covers activities implemented by government and non-government actors seeking to prevent or mitigate violent extremism through non-coercive measures that are united by objectives of addressing the drivers of violent extremism. One of the major flagship programs, it's Strive, that is strengthening resilience against violent extremism, where they're trying to address the listed uh, 8 specific measures, that is education, media capacity, empowerment of women, youth work, social economic inclusion, governance, capacity building, transitional justice, inter-communal activities, and they have been collaborating with various local organizations, NGOs, and think tanks to actually implement the entire project. And in the understanding of youth is that youth is a beneficiary and a participant for the project, but not considered as a partner in the entire program. Moving forward to the other agency, that is Commonwealth. So again, they do not have any official or unofficial definition when it comes to their CVE programs. They have in-depth technical assistance for countries with UN with unaddressed vulnerability to violent extremism. They have youth and CSR training and support, capacity building and awareness raising activities to improve knowledge about CVE among Commonwealth member governments, research communication information to advance understanding of CVE, and advocacy for small states that are not able to support routine engagement with multilateral forums. When it comes to USA definition of VE, they have a specific definition that is referring to advocating, engaging in preparing or otherwise supporting ideologically motivated violence to further social, economic, political, or religious objectives. In terms of the CVE programs, they focuses our their purpose is reduce the risk of recruitment into and support for violent extremism, building the capacity and commitment of our partners in government, civil society, youth organization, and private sectors to prevent and counter violent extremism. When it comes to PV, again, they doesn't define PV, but they define preventive projects. Short and long-term activities or investment that reduce citizen opportunities and inclination to engage in violent extremism, such as awareness raising and other programs. In terms of the specific measures, so they have four measures. One is programming effectively against conflict and extremism, people-to-people reconciliation fund, conflict assessment through frameworks, conflict sensitive aid training. Again, youth are seen as beneficiary in some projects. Now moving forward to the government of South Asian nations, how they see violent extremism, and starting from India, uh, we don't have any definition, and many times we is used with terrorism itself. So seeing how Ministry of Defense and Home Affairs are looking at it, they have a left-wing extremism division in which they have various schemes and various programs in it, like civic action program, media plans, special central assistance, and other things. But mainly they're focusing on just one kind of extremism. If we move forward to other specific agencies, so Ministry of External Affairs consider highlighting violent extremism as a major challenge and emphasizing on CVE in several bilateral and high-level meetings. But again, no specific measure on that. In terms of laws, we have National Investigation Agency Act, OPA or Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, and Armed Forces Special Powers Act. And all of these three have been amended many times in past few years. And these are the specific law that we have seen being misused against youth specifically. Moving to Sri Lanka, again, there is no definition and sees violent extremism as cause of terrorism or new kind of terrorism. CVE measures, the Ministry of Defense sees violent extremism is easier to deal with. Authorities can locate venues of training and gather groups being trained and even rehabilitate them. In terms of laws, though, their laws are again focusing more on the terrorism aspect, the Prevention of Terrorism Temporary Provisions Act, and give power of arrest and detention without appeal or appearance in court, similar to UPA. PV measures, they have community policing. Sri Lanka has sought expertise in PV from Global Community Engagement Resilience Fund, through which some level work is being conducted, and they have an investment made with them as well. Moving forward to Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is a very special case, I would say, because they have been working extensively on WPS and terrorism because of various cases in Bangladesh of the terrorism itself as well as of extremism. But again, they do not have a definition when it comes to the CV measure. Ministry of External Affairs says that Bangladesh have become a party to all 14 international counterterrorism conventions. So like they're actually party of all the convention, leaving no, not even like a single one. And Bangladesh close partnership with the UN entities, bilateral partner, civil society organization, and strengthening country response to the threat of terrorism and violent extremism. They have several laws, as you can see on the screen: Special Power Act, Anti-Terrorism Act, ICT Act, and many others. When it comes to PVE, specifically the Foreign Ministry focuses on different aspects. Bangladesh are actively involved with international preventive initiatives to counter terrorism, investment in capacity building, intelligence sharing, raising awareness against hate speech, xenophobia, and infodemics, and abuse of online platform, specifically focusing on the gender aspect of terrorism and violent extremism, as well as full and effective implementation of WPS agenda, and is one of the few countries that has a national action plan on WPS as well. In terms of prevention, they have strengthening social cohesion and raising awareness to prevent all forms of conflict, VE, and gender discrimination, participation, focusing on women's meaningful participation. Moving forward to Pakistan. So, Pakistan has uh, a very clear overlap between countering extremism and terrorism, and none of these things are actually defined. They have a specific plan that is called the National Action Plan 2014, in which they have 20 different points that focusing on reducing the financing part, strengthening the NSCTA, which is the National Counter Terrorism Authority, which is the leasing authority that looks after all the VE and terrorism activities in the country, like how to prevent all these activities. And in the 20 uh, action points that you could see on the screen, their major focus is again on um, reducing the finances of terrorist organizations, or zero tolerance of militancy, specific in certain areas like Punjab or the KPK area. All these things are coming in. So moving forward, so government of Pakistan actually has tried to like involve other stakeholders. So they collaborated in 2018 with Institute of International Islamic University, which is a think tank, where they engage with various religious leaders to present a comprehensive narrative of violence, in which all the religious leaders they collectively stood against violence and released various fatwas. Uh, in terms of their CV, major Federal Information Ministry, they have a special project called Pakistan Peace Collective, in which they engage with university students on CV, spreading awareness, and they have different courses on conflict resolution as well. And there are different wings within the government, like the military, the counterterrorism department. They have been running various rehabilitation and de-radicalization projects, as you could see some on the screen. And they have specific laws like Anti-Terrorist Acts, Protection of Pakistan Act, and these acts are also amended from time to time. Coming to think tanks, uh, one of the major organizations that has been supporting UNSCR 2250 is Search for Common Ground, and they have a specific definition as well of violent extremism. The choice individuals make to use or support violence to advance a cause based on exclusionary group identities. The particular identity of the perpetrators of violence doesn't determine what constitutes violent extremism, nor does the nature of the ideology, even if that ideology may be considered radical by many. Another violent extremism relate to an individual or a group's violent advancement of an exclusionary ideology, which seeks to eliminate the other group, culture, or identity. In terms of PV, again, they consider PV as a systematic preventive steps to address the factor that support individual to join violent extremism groups by addressing possible structural causes of acceptance and advocacy of extremist ideologies, including political, social, and or economic marginalization, etc., and delegitimization of terrorist groups, their ideologies, and their violent tactics. So, targeting these sort of areas should be given equal priorities to intelligence, law enforcement, and military means. And prevention efforts should understand the environment which enables violent extremist groups to operate and recruit. So, like touching upon different aspects, like even the context itself within the definition. So moving forward to other think tanks. So there are certain think tanks that we are uh, and think tank and NG that we are talking about in this presentation. So starting from Kofi Annan, Asia Foundation, and Peace Direct. So they have been working in one capacity or the other. For instance, Kofi Annan has a very broad project running for years now that is called the Extremely Together project, in which they have youth from 10 different countries. They are working on ground on PVE. Asia Foundation has several publication, workshops, and podcasts, mainly focusing on capacity building. on CVE, Peace Direct promotes research and publication by young researchers and also support various local organizations in South Asia as well to prevent PVE, but none of these organizations has any specific definition that they adhere to. When it comes to international law, so they consider it as a multi-dimensional, context-specific perspective. The organization explores the different social, political, and individual drivers of conflict at a local level, which create a vacuum to which extremist groups respond. And they have been responsible for the YPS agenda implementation so far, but nothing in terms of the definition of PVE and CVE. Moving forward to other organization, uh, we all know about UNOY. UNOY has been focusing again on 2250 and is a partner. Let me just add Jaya. Okay, and is a partner of the LI project as well, but there's no specific definition of VE, CVE, or PVE, and same goes for Mercy Corp, no specific definition. Counter Extremist Project is running in various countries, specifically working on CVE measures, and they actually have an entire glossary of various terms, and within which violent extremism is defined as violent and non-violent extremism. So V is used to describe movements that endorse certain forms of violence to pursue an extremist ideological agenda. And on the other hand, as you could see, they have specific CV measures like recruitment and operational tactics. CEP also provides support to counter extremism prevention, de-radicalization, rehabilitation, reintegration programs around the world. Then we have FCA, or Network of Religious and Traditional Peacemakers. So they have a specific PVE measure, that is preventing and addressing violent extremism PACE project, in which the community resilience in Balkans and MENA aims to tackle the global issues of radicalization. And second is the Ally project. So within the PAVE project, they have defined violent extremism and they adhere to the same definition while they're implementing the project. So the PAVE consortium views extremist and violent extremism in opposition to a democratic center society and its core values, creating construction of in and out groups, when in some context there is a radical rupture with existing social contract. Alliance for Peace Building defines VE is the use of violence to shape society according to a particular set of political or religious beliefs. In terms of their CVE measures, they use the term as preventing and countering violent extremism. They have strategies aimed to dissuade individual or group from mobilizing toward violent extremism through nonviolent means. So their definition has both the terms together, preventing and countering. And comes to the when it comes to their PV measures, they specifically focuses on research and advocacy. So AFP is a part of large consortium sponsored by USIP and USA to get more nuanced understanding of regional and local manifestation of extremism. So we did go through more than say 40 NGOs, but since the data was not much relevant, that's why we haven't added those ones. So moving forward to think tanks, what is RUSI? So there is no specific definition of VE, but when it comes to other, they do have a definition. For instance, for CVEs, these are the activities that either identify at-risk population, individuals, or addresses individual incentives, enabling factors, and or structural motivated diagnosed as contributing toward radicalization for violent extremist recruitment. So they have various programs that focuses on CVE. In total, they have 6. And sorry, but for the repetition of measures, there's some problem with the writing right now here. Moving forward to PVE measures, PVE is a broad-based mass prevention program addressing a range of social grievances, including but not specifically focusing on factors contributing to violent extremism, for example, convention development initiatives and national level education reform. In terms of major, this specifically uh, emphasizes on research publications on VE and PVE. And they also touch upon various specifically on gender, far-right extremism, and social media, and all the online platform how they have been impacting violent extremism. Coming to USIP, so USIP has been working very closely with the US government, and they developed a task force that you could see under the PV measures Task Force on Extremism in Fragile States, Preventing Extremism in Fragile States. Uh, so they define violent extremism, a form of conflict prevent of violent conflict in which people espouse, encourage, and perpetuate violence as they seek to replace existing political or social institutions with a new political or social order governed by an absolutist and totalitarian doctrine that denies individual liberty and equal rights to citizens who identify differently. In terms of their CVE measure, they have a resolve network, that is the resolve network researching solution to violent extremism, in which uh, researchers and experts from across the globe, they have been working together to develop various research and manuals on CVE and PVE. So they mainly operate in Western Balkans, in Sub-Saharan Africa, and South and Central Asia. In terms of the PVE, so again, referring back to the task force, so the task force developed a specific strategy for the US State Department, and they suggest that better political and economic opportunities for youth as a part of preventive policy that could be adopted by the states. And they also recognize the role of youth in peace building and conflict resolution. And their specific key recommendations are adopt a shared policy framework for strategic prevention, launch a strategic prevention initiative, and establish a partnership development fund. So Hedaya is one of the leading organized think tanks that is working on research on CVE and PVE, and they refers uh, violent extremism as the beliefs and actions of people who support or use ideologically motivated violence to further social, economic, religiously based, or political objectives. CV is defined as the programs and policies which aim to dissuade individuals or groups who are radicalization and recruitment into violent extremism. And in terms of the measures, the National Plans to PVE and CV program has assisted 19 different countries. Technical assistance provided under this program includes supporting the design, review, implementation, evaluation of national strategies. And NAP also responds comprehensively and effectively to VE in the national and local context. In terms of the PVE measures, uh, Creating Minds for Social Good is a joint project, Hidayah and the US government of states, along with various local media and technology hubs. They empower credible voices in the region to develop targeted interventions and campaigns in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and UAE, in addition to relevant content to Lebanon and Morocco. Moving to OSCE, going back to the definition that we refer to under the EU, OSCE has an entire concept of VERD, that is violent extremism and radicalization that lead to extremism. Is challenging due to lack of a universally agreed upon definition. Uh, in terms of their CVE measures, so they have an action against terrorism unit that works with government officials, first line practitioner, researcher, and civil society to support the development and implementation of impactful PVRLT policies and programs. And they have already provided over 5 million in direct financial support to local and regional organizations working at the grassroots level to prevent and counter violent extremism. In terms of the PVE measures, they have training courses under the main banner of Leaders Against Intolerance and Violent Extremism, in which they specifically target college-going students. Global Center on Cooperative Security. Again, they do not have any specific definition, but in terms of their CV measures, they have provided 5 million in direct financial support. I'm sorry, I read it initially under the OSCE. But yeah, they have provided 5 million in direct financial support to local and regional organizations to prevent and counter violent extremism. When it comes to Institute for Strategic Dialogue, is based in Pakistan and has been actively working even with youth-led organization. But when it comes to their specific projects or definition, so they consider VE extremism in the advocacy of a system of belief that claims the superiority and dominance of one identity-based in-group overall outgroups and promotes a dehumanizing othering mindset that is antithetical to pluralism and the universal application of human rights. So with this, we are coming to the very end, and now I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and